I was collecting my tea. I thought I have to have my tea. Good morning, people of LinkedIn. Good morning. If you're joining us on YouTube on this very snowy morning, have you got snow, Joe, where you are?
No, we've just got wind. So I'm down in Brighton on the
Uh,
south coast. We've just got wind and rain.
Oh, okay. You're in Brighton. So I'm in between sort of like Birmingham and the Welsh border, basically. So
Ooh.
so we've got like there's a blanket of snow outside. You can possibly almost see it reflecting. I'm actually going to take a photo a bit later and use it as my Christmas cards for this year. So yeah, we've got a blanket of snow. So good morning if you're joining us live. Hopefully everybody is safe and well. And tell us maybe what the weather's like. So this is our first LinkedIn Live back of 2026. Joe, I'm going into my 4th year now of doing LinkedIn Lives. We've been doing this for 3 years every week.
Do you ever have a break? Do you take a holiday?
Only for Christmas. Only for Christmas and New Year. Yeah. So
I
even
love
when I'm
it.
even when I'm traveling, I go live wherever I am. Or sometimes might occasionally do a pre-record if I know I'm literally traveling when it's Friday morning. Yeah.
Wow. And I love that there's
Yeah.
that many interesting people. So you kind of got to think that's 50 people a year. Over
Yeah.
200 people. I'm honoured.
Yeah. It's a lot, actually, when you say it like
200
that.
people.
Yeah, it's a lot. And we tend to have like lots of new people. Occasionally, we have like one or two people back in. Maybe if somebody's like standing in for somebody, or just whether there's a really fascinating topic and we get them back in. But yeah, we've spoken to a lot of different people. So yeah, it's great. Good morning, Jill. Jill says good morning. Good morning, Joe and Cheryl. Jill, please let me know what the weather is like where you are. Jill is in Worcester. So I'm
Oh,
guessing maybe Jill's weather is a little bit like mine. Maybe it's snowy. Cesar joining us from the United Arab Emirates, from Dubai, I'm guessing. Cesar, let me know. Good morning and thanks for arranging a session on this important topic. It is a really important topic. Cesar was one of my panelists for the Dubai Summit. Cesar, I'm guessing you don't have snow in Dubai, but I heard it's a little bit chillier than normal. Mac was telling me it was down to like 13 degrees at night. So yeah, in the UK here we have snow. But yeah, we've got this fascinating topic, and I've got Joe Fuller from the Merry Menopause, who when we had our first chat about menopause, my mind was blown. And for those that have read the post, you will know. So Joe, we were just sort of like debriefing after the Christmas period, Christmas and New Year. And it is a strange time of year, isn't it? For a lot of people, it's not it's not all like sort of like fun and games or anything. It can be quite a challenging time of year. And also going into the new year can be quite difficult as well. Do you agree with that, Joe?
yeah, completely. I mean, we were just talking about sort of, so I'm single, I don't have any family, and there's a sort of,
Yeah.
you're just bombarded with everybody in, matching Christmas jumpers sitting under the Christmas tree. So it can be a very lonely time. And
Yeah.
luckily I had a friend's Christmas, there's a lot of support. So I had to really adjust my perception of Christmas.
Yeah.
And I've had to do so for many years. But this year I feel like I finally nailed it.
Yeah. Amazing.
I finally I've got out of my head. And then, coming that lovely sort of lull where you can really take a break, because nobody's online, nobody's sending you emails. So you really can wind down.
Yeah.
Then you come into this week, which is just like, oh.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good morning, Adrian from Cornwall. So Adrian's down in Cornwall. Good morning. Cornwall's been windy and wild
Battered.
and cold. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are all safe down there, Adrian, as well. Interesting, you were saying about kind of how we go into like almost like this new season, and there is that lovely word for menopause, isn't there, in Chinese? Is it like second spring or something?
Yeah, I'm
Something
there.
about, yeah, when you're going into like a new season. I bought my daughter a book for Christmas, which was Wintering, which for anybody that like struggles with the dark nights and the cold and everything, this book, because I heard the author talking about it, the book is almost like about like how you almost just like accept that as a phase, and kind of just go into your hibernation mode a little bit and make the best of recharging your energy and all of those things, and not kind of fighting against the season. So I thought that was really interesting.
I do a lot of work around the menstrual cycle, Cheryl, because I think it's so important that we understand and work with our cycle as a,
Yeah.
phase for menopause. So the winter phase in the cycle is represented about when you bleed, and we have that natural low energy. It takes an awful lot of energy for the body to bleed. So naturally, when we're bleeding, we want to hunker down. And we need to honour that. And that, for so many of us, if we come into perimenopause, burn out, that's when we're going to be most symptomatic generally. So if we learn from an earlier age as possible just to take a few days rest, just to honour our body every month. That doesn't mean stopping completely if you can't. But it's just understanding the reason why you're tired, and step into that like we do in winter, and just slowly a few days recharge so you can go into the next cycle rejuvenated and rested and start again. That then happens in midlife. So our perimenopause is definitely an extended part of our premenstrual phase, which is represented by the autumn season. And then we have our winter phase, and then we come out post-menopause. And I'm really kind of feeling
into
that
spring. Into spring. I love that. It's good morning. Says that it's in Dubai, it's 22 degrees. Grey in Worcester, grey and damp, windy overnight, couple of snowflakes. As I said, we've had a good, I would say, 3 or 4 inches here where I am. I'm kind of like just on the Welsh border. And I've got William as well. Let me see that. Here in Asia, a bit of drizzle. You're in Indonesia. Good morning, William. Thank you for joining us from Indonesia. Gosh, we've got really global this morning, Joe. Really global. We've gone really global. Let me just, so welcome and thank you again, Joe, for joining us. Joe, we have a tradition on here where I get ChatGPT to write your bio, and you get to score it out of 10, right? So here's your bio from ChatGPT. Joe Fuller is an accredited coach and menopause educator who works with organizations on menopause policy, leadership education, and ongoing support. She actually started her career as a writer and columnist, including writing for HuffPost, and that thread of communication and opening up conversations runs all the way through her work. Joe's work grew out of her own experience of perimenopause and realizing how little women are told about what is happening in their bodies. Today, she supports organizations to move beyond one-off awareness sessions and build cultures where people feel safe, asking for support, where managers know what to do, and where midlife women are not quietly edged out of their careers.
Pretty good.
Marks out of 10. Marks out of 10. How did that?
I wasn't a writer for the Huffington Post. I've had a lot of articles published by various. So got that wrong. But what did you just put my name into chat and ask it?
Your name and maybe some of your LinkedIn info.
Pretty good. Yeah. Apart from the saying I was a writer at the Huffington Post. But it's probably picked up that I put. Pretty good. Thank you.
Amazing. So where we're going to start with is and Pauline's just arrived. Morning in Glasgow. Not had any snow yet. Aberdeen has had loads of. Amazing. It's so varied everywhere. Before we get into the questions, how did you get into this line of work, Joe? So from your background as like a conversationalist and really driving great conversations and commenting, I guess, on life and what's going on around us, how did you get into this particular work, and why were you so passionate about the importance of it?
From my own experience. So I started perimenopause in 2009, so sort of kind of the year before we went into lockdown. And it was the year that I realised that the past 7 years, so from 42 to 49, had been really tricky. So there were some big life events, but there was also, I felt that there was just something else going on. And it was like, why am I not coping? Why am I not sleeping? Why am I anxious? Why is my skin itchy? Why can't I think straight? What is going on? Is it grief? Is it stress? And I learned the word perimenopause. And I was like, what the actual? I'm informed. I look after myself. Why has nobody told me that we have, way before our periods stop, our hormones start to change and fluctuate, and this leads us into menopause. I kind of thought menopause might happen to me in my 50s. I'll worry about it then. It might be all the tropes and all the pictures I saw were grey-haired ladies being exhausted with their head in their hand. It just didn't reflect me and what my experience. So I got to 49 and I was like, this is so wrong. This is a complete injustice. Why are we not taught this in school? Why are we not having why are we being held back? Why this secrecy? Why this shame? Why this stigma? And why aren't we talking openly? And why are we not preparing? Why are we not giving people a chance? So outrage. Started an Instagram account, just started posting what I was learning. And this is really simple stuff, but it's so important. Why is nobody? I was just outraged, Cheryl.
Right.
And it went. I was just posting on Instagram about my own journey, and from there I got asked to do some speaking, and then I started developing workshops and awareness sessions, and the business grew into what it is today, which is still there is so much taboo about women aging, and I think it's like the genderism bit and sort of menopause comes into that, but there is so much around women at home and at work, you know, in so many aspects of, like, you know, what we're seeing every day about aging, and it's changing and it's definitely becoming more positive, but there is still, like anything, there's those deep-rooted stigma around what happens when we lose our fertility.
It's really interesting what you say there about the stigma about women aging. Why do you think that is, in terms of particularly the differences between the genders? You know, why is it, you know, George Clooney's held up as, you know,
a silver fox? I think society, but I mean, if we go sort of deep into it, you know, George probably still fertile. He's probably still able to, like, you know, sow his seed and help the population. And I think women are seen, and always have been seen, on a larger scale, just as reproductive vessels, you know, to have children. And for those of us, you know, sort of another conversation is sort of women who've never had children for whatever reason. You know, but it seems to be that when we look back on the history of women in the workplace, women, you know, go back to witches, you know, the sort of the women being repressed, being their power being held down, and not allowed to shine as men have been in the past. And I think that's definitely changing, and it's definitely changing as women get older. And when we look at it's interesting, I've been doing some work in the events industry recently. 80% of the events industry is women. The top tier is men. So women are leaving the events industry generally around midlife, and they're not coming back. And it's like, if we really want to see gender parity, real inclusivity, we have to support women with menopause and menstruation. We have to make this subject part of well-being, part of the normal day-to-day conversation. We need to recognize that it's not holding women back. You know, women's cycles and, you know, their hormones are not a side note to leadership. It's one of the reasons so many women become the leaders that they are.
And what you've said just there kind of like segues really nicely into, you know, the reason that I called this the business case for menopause policies. I think, you know, when people think about menopause, they do think about, you know, all of the things that you said there in terms of, you know, the symptoms or the stereotypes or the stigma and all of that kind of thing. But actually, the one thing that I really loved about our conversation is when you broke it down into, actually, this is why it's really important for businesses to understand this. You know, this is the business case for menopause. So just take us through that in terms of, you know, you've just given us the one example there of people leaving roles, right? People leaving before they get into leadership, etc. So just talk us through the business case in terms of why organizations really need to be thinking about this.
Yes, you've got to think of perimenopause, menopause come at a time when many women are stepping in to bigger roles, into leadership roles, or they're already in a very senior position, and they're kind of like the fabric of an organization. They naturally become mentors. They're naturally, you know, this is a huge pool of intellectual and practical talent. And they need supporting. Menopause is not an illness. It can't be cured. It is a natural recalibration that will affect everyone who menstruates. So that's 51% of the world's population. And the other 49% are pretty much going to experience it by proxy.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make somebody not capable of doing their job or not showing up to do their job whatsoever, but there will be difficulties for a lot of people. You know, the average woman will experience between 5 and 7 symptoms. And for some, these can be really debilitating. They can be really difficult. And a lot of them, mainly the psychological symptoms, so the brain fog, the anxiety, the lack of sleep, these are the things we can't see.
Yeah.
And if you're in an environment where you can't talk about it, where you've got on top of everything, the everyday pressures of work, family life, a lot of caring responsibilities that come in midlife, plus the way that you're feeling, you're holding this all down, it's just going to implode. Yeah. So one of the biggest things we can do, normalize this conversation all over, all ages and genders, get everyone involved in it, but also for workplaces to recognize that if somebody's not putting themselves up for promotion, if somebody's retreating, if somebody's not speaking up in meetings like they used to, if they're not showing up like they used to, it's not like what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
What's changing.
Yeah.
And normally managers, senior bosses will recognize that before the individual. The individual may not even be putting that sort of sinking that in with a hormonal change. They might just think there's a lot of other stuff going on for them. But it's about recognizing there is nothing wrong with somebody. They don't need special treatment, but they will probably need some support. And that can be in the day-to-day working environment. That can be with coaching, peer coaching, awareness sessions, being able, one of the biggest things that I see is being able to talk openly about why you're feeling the way you are, and actually stepping back from something or stepping into something. Because if that happens, if that support is in place, this is a really expansive time for a lot of women. You know, when we get through the sort of the tough 2 or 3 years that some of this experience, we come out the other side, it's a really expansive time, and it can be a real catalyst for growth and self-development. Yeah. And with that comes a huge input into the working environment that you're in. So to give up on somebody for a really short period of time in their career is a really bad business decision. Yeah. When you can spend some money, support a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things when it costs to replace somebody in the workplace. Yeah. And support them through, you know, their perimenopause phase into their early menopause. Yeah. And then you will see the results. It will pay for itself.
That's the key, isn't it? And I feel like I probably should have, there's probably an equation, isn't there? But when if somebody were to like look at the costs and the potential benefits of supporting versus not supporting somebody through menopause, particularly somebody, you know, as you said, and this is where the light bulb moment for me, it was, especially when you think about like women that are literally at the top of their careers and maybe just about to go into the boardroom or you know, recently been promoted into the boardroom, the cost of like not supporting those brilliant, capable women at that time of life, it's incredible. You know, the cost to replace them, the cost to like get somebody else in from outside to train, you know, it's potentially huge, isn't it? You know, just in terms of if you were to put a pound or a dollar sign in front of it, right? It's a lot.
But then you've also got to think about the impact that will then have on the business, because you know, another thing I'm really passionate about is getting younger women to understand the aging process and, you know, what's coming. It's like you can really be prepared. Prepared is a phrase I use an awful lot, and younger women within an organisation are looking at how older senior leaders, they're like, is this a place I want to stay? Oh my gosh, they're getting rid of everybody in their late 40s, early 50s. Every time they do a restructure and there's a redundancy package, look who's going. And it's like that psychological safety for younger women. It's like, this isn't a place where I want to stay long term, because look what happens when you get to a certain age.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
There's an awful lot of things that come
so it has a ripple effect. And I guess even in terms of as you say, you know, how attractive that organization looks as an employer, you know, so it's employer brand, you know, as you say, if it, you know, how well does it support women going through that phase, or as you say, does it kind of just you know, not support them and they all sort of move on, because those things they're not attractive, right? They don't make you an attractive employer. Yeah.
But it's also, you know, it's not just the women in the organisation, it's midlife men, because, you know, midlife brings an awful lot. So you may be supporting a partner going through perimenopause who is, you know, just there may be, you know, parental duties, teenage children. There's an awful lot that goes on for people in midlife. Plus, you know, a lot of them are at this tier in the workplace where there's a huge amount of workplace responsibility. So it really is about understanding your employees, talking to employees, engaging with your employees. Where sort of ERGs come in, they can be that, you know, that segue between what's really lived experience in the workplace and the senior management team. And it's about really having thoughtful conversations and collecting data and really understanding what the needs of individuals groups are. And then of course, you know, they're not a little group sitting in the corner. It's not a niche well-being. Nice to have. It's like it will impact the whole organisation, and after them will create a better well-being for everyone.
And also like the age. I'm just going to dive into the comments here. Just start with this one here. Apologies, I can't see who this is. I'll see if I can multitask a little bit and go into my LinkedIn and see. Somebody's saying here, started menopause at 38, and that is worth bearing in mind, isn't it? That for, you know, so most of us, when we think about perimenopause and menopause, we think about like, you know, 40s, 45 onwards. But for some women, it obviously can start earlier. So actually having that support in place is not only just helping, you know, women that are, you know, 40s plus. There will be younger women that potentially go through it as well. I'm gonna just do
and
the
Sharon,
comments.
on that note, you know, when we start talking about women's hormones in the workplace, we need to look at, you know, this then raises the question of other sort of issues. So obviously pregnancy is normally very well supported with an organisation, but PCOS, pregnancy loss, PMDD, you know, all these other hormonal issues that impact somebody's day to day that aren't their fault. You know, but do impact how somebody feels. And then we have early menopause. So if somebody goes through menopause sort of in their 20s and 30s, then around that there's a huge sense of identity loss, of grief. You know, normally that can happen naturally, but often it's down to medical treatment that affects the ovary. So there's you know, supporting women holistically in the workplace really needs to change.
Which
people
I think
bulk at that and go, oh my god, the cost and it doesn't have to be hugely expensive, and it doesn't have to be a massive piece of work. It just needs to be consistent.
And we'll get onto that, because I think, because you mentioned some other things in there, and I think there is something about just support. I mean, I was going to go on a real rant then about health and healthcare and all that, but there's something about supporting hormone health, which I feel that as a society, even when it comes to men's health, we don't often think through the lens of hormone health generally, like for the whole population. So we'll definitely come on to that. I love what Sylvia Anna Corzo said here. In their 50s, women come to their senses and go and work for themselves. I think there's a little bit there's definitely a little bit of that happens, Sylvia, I think. And then somebody's put here, surely on a human level, the right thing to do is to support someone going through the menopause. People really remember when your leader or business shows up for you, especially during tough and vulnerable times. They'll hold on to that experience for life. I think that's very correct. Let me just go back through here, Sylvia. In practical terms, what do you think it is? So let's get on to this then. What do you think is missing from some of the policies? What do you think should be included? So let's get on to some of the things around whether it's awareness or other interventions. But maybe let's start with the policy. What is it that's missing from some of the policies, do you think, Jo?
Yeah, I mean, a good strategy, it's not just a policy, it's not just an awareness session. You know, these things are great, but if you just have a one-off awareness session, you open a box, and then where's the support? So many times I've delivered an awareness session, piece of work, and I've had private messages, I've had emails from people who haven't been able to felt comfortable enough to speak up in the Q&A at the session, and they need extra support. It's like they've recognized themselves what I'm saying, and there is no support. So now you've suddenly got somebody flailing around in that, okay, this is me. So it's really important to build a strategy. So you start, I mean, ideally we start the top with a senior leader who's like really championing this piece of work. And then we have a policy, and that's guidance for managers and employees. So it's like what support is available, what the company would do to support you, and that all needs to be detailed in the policy, and that varies very much between organisation to organisation. But it needs to be something that's accessible, that's readable, not too much small. It just needs to be a real reference point for people.
Yeah.
And then from the policy, you can then build the strategy about what works for your business, what your budget restraints are, what your location restraints are.
Yeah.
And that generally starts with awareness sessions. Educate your line managers first. We don't want them to be menopause experts, but we need them to have some empathy, some understanding. How do you start a conversation? How do you support somebody? How do you recognize that somebody, as I said, there's nothing wrong with them, but what's changing for them? And then wider company-wide awareness sessions, because then if anybody is struggling, they know that their line manager is in a position to offer them support or signpost support. And then from all of that continued support, so facilitation of menopause cafes, group coaching, one-to-one coaching, don't just do all that work and then walk away, and then make that consistent. So that's there for anybody new joining the company can get into this cycle of support. And it's about being consistent. It's about not taking menopause day and doing one thing. It's about how do we ensure that the well-being and the psychological safety for all our employees are there 365 days a year.
365 days. Yeah, I love that. Just as literally as Bernadette's comment has come through, Bernadette Thompson, good morning, the amazing Bernadette. Moving beyond the one-off awareness sessions, proper policy, strategy and action. Bernadette looks after inclusion in NHS trusts in the south of England. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, moving beyond those one-off awareness sessions. And I love that where you started as well, Jo, you said about identifying a senior leader who, you know, maybe they can become the champion. And I always think that's so important, especially when employee network starts. So maybe for example, somebody's got a women's network, it could be the exec sponsor, but actually it could be somebody else. It could be somebody else who maybe either they have been through or are going through or have supported their partner through it. They could be a really good champion, you know, somebody it really resonates with, you know. It
just starts the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it just starts to normalize it. And it's, you know, it's a cultural change.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be embedded in the culture that we support those in midlife going through their perimenopause and menopause transition. We understand this is a hormonal change. This isn't a choice. This isn't something you opt in or out of. This is something that's going to come to probably some of the most brilliant people within our organization.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do we do to prepare them? How do we support them? And how do we facilitate what they need? Do they just need to take a step back for a while and hold off on that promotion? Or if they, you know, if you want them to step out into a bigger role, it's how do we do that? Do we get a peer group together? Do we facilitate that with coaching? Because it's not just workplace issues that will be impacting people, as we've said before. There's so much external stuff going on in midlife. It's like, you know, how we continue that ongoing support and make that available and make that easy to ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like somebody mentioned in the comments here, and I think you said about this sandwich caring for a lot of women. So a lot of women who are caring for, you know, elderly parents or family members, as well as potentially, you know, their own children, stepchildren, etc. So there is the whole caring responsibility that, you know, I just seem to be surrounded by all of my friends that are caring for, you know, all kinds of three generations sometimes, literally.
And again, that's not something we're prepared for. You know? So suddenly, and it's happened to me, you become the carer for your parents.
Yeah.
And that just sometimes just happens overnight. And it's like, wow, that's not something we talk about either.
Yeah.
Like how
absolutely.
Suddenly the roles are reversed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really challenging and it's really upsetting.
Yeah. I want to come to Cesar's point. So Cesar has mentioned maybe some of the other things that are kind of like included. So in the basket of things that organizations do with this strategy. So flexible work, potentially, probably links into what you were saying there about, you know, if somebody needs to step back, you know, what could that look like? Or what does the support look like in terms of, I guess, ways of working, you know, working patterns, insurance covering HRT. I don't know whether, does insurance cover HRT in this country? I don't know.
Well,
Jo,
we're very lucky because it's available on the NHS. So
of course,
for anybody in the UK, you know, and we can buy an annual subscription, which is about £20. which will cover our HRT. But it's important to understand HRT can be wonderful, you know, but it's not a panacea. It doesn't take away aging parents, teenage kids, a troublesome team member, issues around the board table. You know, it will certainly can help the transition, but it's not like a lot of people expect to take it and go, wow, you know, I'm back to my 30s. You will never be who you were in your 30s, and that's a really good thing, because you are evolving and changing. And there, for us personally, there has to be a level of acceptance that you're changing. And you have to move with that change, because if you resist it, that's where it can be a real stumbling block. And it takes time to accept that we're aging and we're getting older.
Absolutely.
But actually, when we can see the joy in that, you know, what that brings us.
I want to bring in this global aspect, because Cesar said something here that's really important. Cesar is in Dubai, which what she said here is UK is still well ahead in this area. The rest of the world needs to ensure this is a priority. I'm conscious we've possibly got some people on here that work for global organizations, and I know that many women's networks, particularly in the larger organizations, the women's networks often are the biggest networks, and they're global. So there is something about, maybe, I don't know whether you've supported any organizations that have looked at this in terms of, is there a way of, when we do the strategy, even if, for example, it's been started by, for example, like the UK network, how do we make sure that it's a global strategy? And conscious that the interventions may not be exactly the same in every country, but the strategy could be looked at globally, right? There's nothing stopping.
Absolutely. I mean, the foundations are there. You know, but obviously it would be nuanced for every area, because obviously there's going to be cultural differences and very different cultural conversations around this. But if you've got an overall strategy that you can then roll out to each individual area and go, the basic framework, how do you see this one? What does this look like for you? And obviously that again is a huge amount of data that you can collect on what's happening in each global site, about what's happening, how it will affect people very differently. So if you look at sort of Asia, and so the symptoms are very different globally. So where in cultures you have a very high protein diet, they have very different symptoms. Whereas in a very sort of carb-based diet, the symptoms are very... So
I never knew that.
Yeah. So sort of in Asian cultures, the symptoms are very different. Hot flushes really don't exist. Osteoporosis, so we look at, you know, the Japanese diet specifically, very high protein, lots of fish, lots of tofu, very few carbs. Bone density issues, you know, are very rare. But also what is quite scary is, as the Western diet is seeping in, as fast food, ultra food is seeping into diets, health issues are changing for many different cultures. I mean, that in itself is a really fascinating area. But so things are going to show up very differently in different regions of the business. But having an overall framework is a really good idea to roll out. And then to see the changes that people are making, I'd be fascinated.
That's really interesting. And it probably leads on to like my next question, which is a really important one, which is about engaging men, right? Engaging men in this. And I had an experience, I think I shared with you. I went to, in the UK, there was a brilliant series, which was An Evening with Dr. Louise Newson. So anybody that's interested in this work will have heard of people like Dr. Louise Newson, and there are others, right, in this space. And what I loved about it, first of all, so it was a Birmingham town hall, but what I loved about it, there were quite a few men in the audience, which was great. It was on a Sunday evening, right? Who wants to go out on a Sunday evening in the winter? There were lots of men in the audience, which was great. And basically, so the first half, and if anybody's thinking about, you know, what a good awareness session might look like. So the first half was, you know, kind of education and information from the stage. And then in the break time, everybody could write a question on a piece of paper. We handed them in. And Dr. Louise Newson literally answered every question, you know, and there were questions from the men, there were questions from the women. And some of the questions got into, like, I would say hormone health more broadly, because obviously we all share, you know, a lot of these hormones, right? You know, women have testosterone, etc. So let's get onto this topic of how do we engage men as well in these conversations, and what does it look like when it's done well, and what are some of the barriers to getting men into this conversation about menopause and hormone health more generally, in terms of how organizations can support people?
Yeah, I mean, it's generally seen as a women's conversation. So you know, you put on it's very much around the marketing. So if you are going to be running an internal, sorry, I've got a hair that is just plaguing me this morning. So if you are running something internally, it's very important to think about the marketing and the messaging. Yeah. Because it's still very much seen as a women's issue, and it's like, oh, why do I need to go to that? You know, and it's also about getting younger people. So when I do anything, I present anywhere to a business, it's like, this is open to all ages and all genders. Right. Because as I said, this 51% of the world's population will go through menopause. The other 49% will experience it by proxy. They will know somebody, their partner, their mum, their sister, their niece, their nephew, it will impact them. It
affects all of us. Yeah.
It affects all of us. So this knowledge, if we're going to remove this shame and stigma, if we're going to normalize this conversation, if we're going to make workplace well-being around this subject just the norm, this conversation has to be really inclusive. Mm-hmm. So it's around the marketing. It's really encouraging people to come along to the sessions. You know, Louise Newson going on tour, brilliant way to raise awareness of this. So any kind of events down to the marketing. And when we do get men in the audience, or younger, I find an awful lot of younger women as well, when we get those into the audience, get the Q&A, they're really engaged. You know, they want to support the people in their life. They want to support their mum. They want to support their partner. They're witnessing these changes and they just don't know what to do. They feel helpless. So once they're equipped with some basic understanding of how this person in their life might be feeling, you know, they become really engaged, and then they can go away, and that can make huge differences in, you know, relationships, when the family, you know, it's a really important conversation to be having at home. Yeah. It's not like, oh, mum's on one again or something like that. It's like a really important conversation you need to have at home and explain what's going on. And that really, the menstrual cycle, going back to the menstrual cycle, you know, just talking about how you're feeling at each stage of the month. Yeah. It normalizes that conversation, so it doesn't come as a bomb dropped, you know, in your days. Yeah. So it's about that open communication, and really stressing how important it is that we're all included in this conversation. Yeah. We're not keeping you out. Yeah. Please come and join us.
Yeah. And I loved you know, the bit that I took away from there in particular, that bit about the marketing. So if you are, you know, having those sorts of sessions, etc., how do you market it to make sure that people realize it's not only for women, you know, it benefits everybody from being involved in the conversation. There was a term that you used at the top of the conversation, and you sort of talked about midlife and the challenges around midlife. And midlife affects all of us, right? We're all going to go, hopefully, through midlife. And I know when we talked before, because I used the term the menopause, but actually the correct term, you corrected me, the term is andropause, right?
Yeah.
In terms of men, the change that men go through. So just talk a little bit about that. And because I'd like to understand whether that is maybe an angle, both to kind of like engage men in thinking about their health in that way, then which then potentially causes empathy for the women, but also just because I'm going to come on to Adrian's point here about, you know, being worried about the stigma, etc. So I think there's something about how do we connect men to this work in a way that really generates empathy when they see actually we all go, you know, all genders go through some level of like hormonal change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think the big difference in midlife that happens for men and women is that for men, they start losing their testosterone. We all start losing our testosterone, sort of really from our late 20s, but it declines very, very slowly. Yeah. And what happens with estrogen and progesterone, we have three sex hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Men have estrogen. They also have testosterone. We have a lot of testosterone. We have 3 times more testosterone than we do estrogen before we hit menopause. So it's a really integral hormone for us. But testosterone declines gradually. So it's
for kind men, for all of us.
For all of us over a number of years. But estrogen and progesterone specifically, is related to ovulation. Progesterone triggers our bleed, our monthly, it's integral to the monthly menstrual cycle, as is estrogen. And these two relatively drop off very quickly. So they decline quite rapidly. Although it's over a number of years, which we call perimenopause, it's actually quite a quick, the levels go quite quickly. And this is why we get this roller coaster of kind of emotions and symptoms during those years. So that's the main difference. So yes, men, testosterone is dropping, but many men are still fertile, well into their 80s. And for us, it's very quick. And that's why we get this, I don't want to say, well, that's why we get perimenopause and menopause. That's why we get this significant change in midlife. And that's the difference. Men won't notice a necessarily significant hormonal change. But it's also, when you think about our 50s, the average age of life expectancy, especially in the UK, is 81. So we get to our 50s, we're in that final third. And suddenly everything's reflecting back on us. It's like, okay, you know, many of us are still sort of fit and active in our 50s, but, you know, you think late 60s, 70s, our mobility, our enjoyment of life, we are coming towards the end. And I think, you know, we have the midlife crisis, you know, that trope, but, you know, let's take the word crisis out of it. And it's like, actually, what is the last third of your life? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. I'm still hanging on to that second spring, right? Second spring.
And it does, you know, and for a lot of, you will see, you know, the divorce rate in midlife goes up, especially amongst women asking for divorces. We suddenly come to that point where it's like, I'm not putting up with this anymore. Our estrogen is a really nurturing hormone. It's what makes us, you know, mothers, makes us very maternal, makes us very caring for all those people around us. And again, you'll notice that in your menstrual cycle, when you're ovulating, you've got a, you know, big surge of estrogen. You're just there for everybody. You stretch yourself. You want to be there for everybody. When we lose our estrogen, when it goes back to prepubescent levels, because that's what happens when we stop ovulating, we don't lose these hormones completely. We get a backup from our adrenal glands, two little glands that sit above our kidneys, which is why stress management is so important. So this, you know, this well-being in midlife is huge. It's not just about taking HRT. It's about everything we need to do to support our body, and especially our adrenals and our stress management. So once we stop our periods, so we go into life post-menopause, we get a backup supply of hormones from our adrenals back to prepubescent levels. So they're still there. They're still ticking away. But we're not having these monthly highs and lows with our menstrual cycle. You know, the big change here is estrogen, where suddenly we become a lot more boundaried. Suddenly, you know, say, women in, you know, older women are very black and white. You know, there is no, you know, and we just become, you know, kind of step into that. So I'm not going to try and people please everybody. I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to be really true to myself. And it's one of the best things about aging is like, it's not being rude to people and sharp and obnoxious, but it's just about being your true self. It's like, actually, no, I don't want to do that for you.
Yeah, I love that.
And I love that. And that is, you know, one of the joys of the second spring.
Yeah, we get to stop people pleasing. I love that. Let's go to this point about stigma, because this is, you know, this is where I was and still am a little bit around this topic, and that's why I think, you know, going back to what you were saying, Jo, about how you position it, the marketing, getting that senior leader on board, etc., to champion it. It's doing it in a way that you know, that sort of like removes some of the stigma, etc. I mean, have you seen anywhere where this has been done well? Because, you know, to Adrian's point, there can be this thing about the stigma and, you know, the ridicule that's kind of that for a long time was attached to menopause. So what are some of the things that you've seen that help to reduce that, you know, kind of take away the silly jokes about hot flashes and things like that? Do you know what I mean? What is it that works?
Yeah, I mean, menopause we need to remove the banter, you know, around menopause and menstruation. We need to talk about it with respect and with empathy. And that is part of the education. That's part of changing the cultural fabric of an organisation. It's like, we're not allowing this anymore, you know, and that comes from a strategy. That comes from really embedding this into your workplace culture. And it's about, you know, the 365 days a year, not just the one-off. And it's, you know, it's a long-term piece of work.
Yeah,
And that's when it
absolutely.
works. That's when it
Yeah,
works. And then you get new people coming into the business where it's the norm that this is
yeah,
how we behave, this is how we address this,
yeah,
this is how we treat people.
yeah,
And then goes on the life cycle of the business.
yeah. It's very interesting what you said there. You mentioned banter, and we know that banter is a big part of UK work culture. And I always say, I always say to organizations, look, I'm not the banter police, right? But banter can be incredibly problematic, right? And we need to, so we need to understand. So I love what you said there about talking about these topics with respect, right? That's, that is the key. And as you say, through the awareness, through the education, etc. If people then are educated so that they can talk about these things and know what they're saying, but also in a way that they've now developed some empathy, etc. Hopefully, Adrian, keen to kind of get your thoughts on that. But these are some of the things that should start to reduce the stigma and the dehumanizing behaviors and language, etc.
When somebody says, I was only joking, and it's like, okay, I've been joking, but the way to respond to that is like, but that really hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And I ask that
absolutely.
you don't say that to me again.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to implode into an argument, but once we, and unfortunately it does sit with us to protect ourselves and put our boundaries in place, but rather than just walking away from that and being really upset, it is important that we respond.
Yeah,
that we
absolutely.
don't respond with an inflammatory retort. It's like, but that really hurt my feelings. Please don't say that.
And a note here from Cesar, one of the big companies I was working and leading ERGs for was against launching a menopause group and awareness around it, mainly due to stigma. That's such a shame, isn't it?
My number, Cesar.
Yeah, get in touch with Joe.
Yeah, we can help.
Joe
can help them.
Yeah,
any business can adapt to this work.
Yeah,
because not every business is the same, and it's about working out, and that's sort of where the work. Go in and understand the business. You've got to understand the business, and
I agree.
It's on what's going to work.
That's what I was going to say. It's about, I mean, a lot of this work that we do, a lot of work around inclusion, etc. Because a lot of these topics are challenging and a lot of them come with stigma or sensitivities in terms of talking about them. And it's always about understanding where the business is and meeting them where they are and adapting the strategy and the language, etc., for the business. And Joe, one of the reasons, when we had that call, I thought, and I've been to a lot of, I've heard a lot of people talk about menopause and menopause in the workplace and all of that. And Joe's probably is the only person that I've heard recently and sort of spoken to that I thought, I would happily kind of have Joe talking to any ERG about this, because I thought that your way was, I could just sort of see how it could work for a lot of business, even the most kind of, aggressive, sort of ambitious businesses. I thought, no, Joe could go in and could definitely talk to them about this and they would get it. And it wouldn't be this kind of fluffy, sort of stigmatized thing that that's that women's thing over there, the women are doing that thing. I just knew that you wouldn't do that, wouldn't have that energy.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think the core of my work is getting people to recognize the value of midlife women. And not writing them off. And it's like any kind of, it's not a niche well-being topic. It's like we've had, the mental health at work topic has become, huge, and it's wonderful and it's respected and it's talked about. We need to get menopause up there. We need to get that. And just talking about, around that in the UK, obviously we are coming into, it's going to become law almost. They're pushing through Parliament that any company with over 250 plus employees, it's to have a menopause policy and to state clearly how they are going to support women going through menopause law. So you want to be ahead of that curve. You don't want to be suddenly going, oh my God, we've got 2,000 employees. We don't just bang out a policy. It's like, be prepared for this. Don't be scared for it.
Absolutely.
It's change management for a lot of organizations, and a lot of the coaching I do around menopause, we treat it as change management. We put some of those principles in place.
That's right.
That you use in the workplace to use individually, and implement a strategy around menopause and menstruation. And I think it's really important you include menstruation. That you start the conversation there. Is a change management piece of work.
Absolutely. Change management. It's the one undervalued toolkit when it comes to inclusion and managing people, for sure. Well, I'm going to dive into the comments, then we're going to finish off soon. We're going to be looking at what's the one action that organizations can do to make a difference. But I want to dive into a couple of your comments here, Sylvia. Anna, good morning. Unprocessed trauma can also affect symptoms. So I guess there's that link there, right, between like trauma and kind of our emotions and psychological and the physical.
And then this one, just to quickly sort of explain that very basic level, our estrogen is this veil. Estrogen protects us from an awful lot. And again, all the stuff that we suppress from childhood, teenagers, mid-20s, any kind of trauma, we suppress it because we just keep going. We just need to get through the day, I need to raise my kids, need to go to university, all those things. And then suddenly we get to midlife, and that protection of estrogen lifts and it surfaces. And again, this is a lot of the work that I do in my coaching, is like, how do we process that so we can move forward?
And you do with your coaching, you coach women in leadership, right? Kind of going through the transition. Amazing. And then Sylvia, Anna, this slightly more complicated, nuanced comment here. On a biological level, the man, this is, depending on your frame of reference, the man provides protection for the woman. So if you're looking at it in this kind of like yin and yang approach, what helps me during this difficult time is hearing the reassurance that despite all the challenges, I'm still contributing. I'm still in touch with my genius. Although we need to be grateful about how we talk about this topic. And like Adrian says, the stigma can cause, I think it's very important that women feel seen, heard and understood by men during this time. It's a fine balance with plenty of nuances. So interesting there, Sylvia. Anna, you're talking, I guess, about, depending on your frame of reference, but that the view around, I guess, the role of men and women, those gender, in terms of supporting each other, which I think is a point that we can all take, right? In terms of the importance of that. And then very finally, your last comment, Sylvia, here. Yes, the amazing value of midlife women. Absolutely.
Yay!
Absolutely. So let's we're starting to wind things up. Sadly, what is one action that organizations can do to make a difference? Because we've spoken about a lot of things, awareness. So maybe if there's an organization that hasn't done anything yet, or maybe they've tried a couple of things, but things have like maybe stalled, what would you say is the one action that organizations could do to make a difference, or where they should start?
Well, there's not one thing. So it's about a strategy. It's definitely about, I think when you just do one thing, that's where you then become firefighting, because then you have an employee or a group of employees going, that's me, and you've got nothing to do with them. You don't know how to support them. So before you open the conversation, really think about it and make sure, where do your people go next? So it is about implementing a strategy. That's the one thing. Don't run a one-off awareness session and have and if that's what you can afford and that's what your budget, but make sure that there is support in place after that session for people.
And to be honest, based on, you saw where you started, which was get your lead, get your champion, get your senior champion and start on the track. That's a great place to start, right? Because as you say,
to start. But from that conversation, you'll then, you will have an influx of, definitely, but there's a possibility that you have an influx of people then into HR or people or L&D and going, that's me. What can you do for me? And they're like, well, we don't know. They've been talking about it, but we're not prepared for it. So it has to come from the top. It has to roll out. You have to roll it out like a project. Because at every step of the way, there is going to be a need that needs to be met, from a line manager who's suddenly, on the phone going, oh my gosh, Joe's just come to me. I've no idea what to do with her. I'm 23, she's 49. That need, so it all has its place. So the one thing you can do is build a really robust strategy.
Amazing.
And then if that person who implements that strategy leads, it's there for their brain fog, Cheryl.
Their successor.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's there, it's embedded, it's there, and it's for people to follow on.
Fantastic. Jo, where can you mentioned about your Instagram? You mentioned that you started on Instagram. Is that the Menopause? What's your handle on Instagram?
But I'm more active on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. So if people want to connect with you and find out more about what you're doing, they can get in touch with you on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to be running a free webinar at some point later in the month. I haven't set the date yet, about why menopause is a workplace issue. Amazing. So if you follow me on or DM me and I can send you the link, or follow me and you'll see it, I'll post about it. But that's going to be a free sort of 30-minute lunchtime webinar on Zoom. So yeah, if anybody's interested.
I love that. I love that. I love a good webinar or a good LinkedIn Live. You know, we can't always get physically to wherever people are, but you know, we can get this information out quite easily to people online. So I love that. Yeah, so absolutely. So reach out to Jo. Please do, you know, follow, connect with her if you're not connected, and have those conversations. So Jo, thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's so lovely to meet you. Thank you for inviting me into your network. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, it's been incredible. Somebody here has said I follow the Menopause podcast. I forgot to say. Yes, we have one of your listeners.
She's redundant at the moment. She did really well. We got to so it's the Menopause Book Club podcast. So Cheryl and I were talking about books before we joined the call. So I'm an avid reader. And she reached the final of the British Podcast Awards, where I almost met Idris Elba. That's another story.
Wow.
But I couldn't get sponsorship for her. And it was a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
But it was, I do quite often post on LinkedIn about the books I'm reading, but and especially as resources for going through midlife, there's some very good sort of manuals around what's happening, also some really positive books that have been written, the benefits of aging and how brilliant it is. Don't give up.
Yeah.
You know, many of the symptoms are temporary. You just have to trust the process and accept that you're aging and you are going to step into this really amazing phase of life.
What's the book that you recommend the most on menopause?
I knew you were going to ask me. I knew you were going to ask me.
What's the book you recommend the most?
So as a really good kind of basic. Oh, Cheryl, I should have been prepared for this, shouldn't I?
I know. I should have. I've got my book case.
There's so many. I mean, Louise Neeson's written some great books. Liz Earle's written some great books.
Liz Earle. I think I've got Liz Earle's book behind me somewhere. Yeah, because my
it gets that. I'm going to have to get up and have a quick look. Hold on one
second. Do that. Everybody that thank you, Paulie, for being with us. Sylvia, Anna, thank you as well. Adrian Caesar in Dubai, thank you for being with us. Hope you've enjoyed it. Final book recommendations. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a crazy book geek.
Dr. Philippa Kay. This is just
incredible.
Like
the science of
this
menopause.
is like just a manual.
Amazing.
So it's like what you need on a need-to-know basis.
Right. So it's like a reference book almost.
Yeah.
Love that.
It talks about sex. It talks about periods. It talks about your gut. So it's a really it's a manual. But there is Eleanor Mills. Her book, The Best Is Yet to Come, I think it's called, which is just a really good, lovely, positive explanation of midlife. And Luann Brizendine, it's called Level Up or Power Up, and that's all about what's happening to our brain. And that's
Amazing. Well, if we remember, we'll drop these book recommendations in the comments afterwards.
Oh, I'll do that. I can do that.
Yeah, easily. We'll do that. Perfect. Thank you all so much for joining us for the last hour. It's been wonderful, and I hope that we've inspired you to take this back to your organizations and maybe start to look out for those senior leaders that can champion, or the kind of obvious person to help pull this together in terms of a strategy and a change management effort in your organization. And if you are in that phase of life, right, kind of going through it, I keep pointing people to that definition, second spring, right? It's the second spring. Like that's just a way of looking at it positively. So Jo, thank you again.
My absolute pleasure.
It's been incredible. And thank you to anybody that is watching us on the replay. Thank you for taking like 59 minutes out of your day to watch this. And I'll see you
on double speed. Watch it on speed and a half.
Watch it on speed and a half. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you can do that on LinkedIn. I know you can do it on YouTube. I don't know whether you can do it on LinkedIn, but yeah, that's a way to do it. Thank you all so much. And I'll see you all next week.